If you're watching this on the Prepper Historian, go ahead and subscribe now, because this is one of those topics that honestly rewires how you think about ancient engineering. What we're about to dig into isn't a romantic Viking myth or some exaggerated saga. It's a real architectural method so effective that medieval scribes later stopped recording it, partly because it was considered common knowledge, and partly because later builders couldn't replicate it. For the next minute, stay with me, because once you understand how the earth-sheltered Viking house actually worked, you'll see why modern off-grid builders are quietly returning to it. This was the home that kept northern families warm with almost no fuel, even when winter punished the land so severely that most people today wouldn't last a week. The forgotten Viking warmth strategy begins with understanding the terrain they chose. Serious historians know Vikings weren't reckless wanderers. They were meticulous planners, especially when selecting ground for their longhouses. Earth-sheltered homes weren't dug randomly. The builders sought slopes with natural drainage, firm underlying soil, and access to prevailing winds for smoke clearance. The key, though, was creating a perfect thermal envelope using the earth itself as insulation. Modern earth-bermed homes follow the same principle, but the Vikings tuned it to extreme climates. The soil around a semi-buried home stayed a stable temperature year-round, often hovering around 7 to 10 degrees Celsius in northern Europe. That meant the home started warm compared to the freezing outside air. From there, they only needed minimal heat to bring it up to comfortable levels. Anyone today building an off-grid shelter can use the same principle. The first step is choosing a south-facing slope if you're in the northern hemisphere, something the Vikings didn't phrase academically, but applied instinctively. It allows passive solar warmth and proper drainage, preventing waterlogged foundations that destroy thermal stability. A simple trench test is enough to check soil stability. Dig down 0.5 metre. If the sides collapse instantly, the soil needs reinforcement. The Vikings, cleverly used woven branches and layers of turf to stabilise their buildings. These days, modern builders might turn to retaining walls or compacted earth for the same effect. Most people, I think, imagine Viking homes as just wooden structures with a bit of grass on top. But that's only half the truth, really. The most effective earth-sheltered homes actually had turf walls, sometimes thicker than an arm span. Turf acts rather like layered insulation. Each slice traps air, creating a barrier much like today's high R-value insulation materials. These walls didn't lose heat quickly, and they didn't soak up moisture the way timber did either. They aged slowly and, resisted the wind in a way wooden boards simply never could. For anyone wanting to try this today, turf walls still work, if you build them properly, of course. You'd start with a timber frame for stability, then layer cut sod blocks with the roots left intact. Stagger them just as you would stack bricks, and let the roots bind everything together. It's not primitive at all. It's structural biology in action. Turf actually grows stronger over time. The Vikings understood this, building homes meant to last for decades, warming up quickly and cooling down slowly. The secret to Viking indoor warmth was their smoke-managed central hearth. In an earth-sheltered structure, a poorly placed fire leads to moisture build-up, suffocation, or, even heat loss. But the Vikings set their hearths slightly below floor level, using the shape of the home to circulate warm air gently upward. Smoke escaped through a carefully shaped louver in the roof. Not just a crude hole, but a managed vent that could be adjusted with turf blocks or wooden flaps. This created what historians call the warm air buffer zone. Rising heat collected at the curved roofline, warming the entire structure before escaping. If you're trying this in a modern survival scenario, the principle remains the same. The heat source must be central, low, and controlled. A small rocket stove or enclosed firebox built into a dug-in shelter replicates this effect. You conserve fuel, heat evenly, and avoid hotspots that create structural stress. Earth sheltering worked because Vikings engineered microclimates inside their homes. Now, this is the part that manuals stopped recording, probably because it was assumed everyone already knew it. Viking homes created microclimates. There were warm zones near the hearth, cooler storage zones near the edges, and temperate sleeping areas along the raised benches. The structure didn't fight the environment. Instead, it shaped it. The consistent humidity inside protected tools, food and fabrics in ways exposed timber homes never could. Anyone studying historical survival strategies should pay attention here. The Viking system didn't rely on constant heating. It relied on stabilizing microclimates. In an emergency shelter of your own, you can do this by dividing the interior into functional zones. Store perishables near the cooler earth-touching walls. Sleep on raised platforms to stay in the warm layer of air. Cook centrally to spread heat outward instead of letting it escape instantly. By the late medieval period, many Scandinavian communities shifted to timber because it was easier to cut and transport with better tools. Church records favoured stone and wood construction and ignored turf engineering because it wasn't prestigious. The knowledge faded, not because it failed, but because society favoured materials that signalled wealth. Yet turf and earth homes remained warmer, more efficient and more resilient than many later structures. For today's prepper, historian or off-grid builder, this lost method is priceless. It teaches that the best shelter isn't always the strongest or the most complex. It's the one using the land itself as part of the thermal system. Even if you never build a full-scale Viking earth house, the principles, thermal mass, airflow management, microclimate shaping, apply to every survival shelter you'll ever design. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe to The Prepper Historian and share this video so more serious history enthusiasts can bring forgotten knowledge back to life.